Theory of rotation. Technical words are avoided if possible. In the old days, people tried hard to discover laws to explain the motions of stars and planets, and they did come up with different theories, among which the theories of Kepler, Newton, Einstein are most commonly used. However, these three theories could not stop further questions coming up from people asking more about the solar system and the universe. A model that can explain the solar system, the galaxies, and the universe can be simulated on an atomic scale for a single model or theory applicable to both atoms and larger subjects. This theory, whose substance has been always acknowledged, is called a theory for everything. To find a model to explain the universe, and in particular the solar system, must have common specifications to explain all inclusively the universe and its every aspect, namely everything that is somehow related to being, like atoms, planets, stars, systems, galaxies, and clusters through a single theory. Electrons spin around. They rotate as they move around the core made of proton and neutron. The same happens on a larger scale for planets, stars, and other parts of the universe. That is to say, every planet rotates its axis while rotating a star at the center, and every star rotates its axis while the planets of its system rotate the center of a galaxy, which rotates with all the galaxies nearby a cluster, all moving in a circle. Now, these questions come up. How and why did this spinning occur in the first place? What is the cause? What is it for? How does it work in the entire universe? What causes its continuity? And many more questions about this model. Answering the questions above will help us understand that these forces have made this world possible. Our research has been aimed at figuring out the relationships between these forces and those rotations. Now, we ask you to pay attention to the following example. Try to imagine a disk rotating its axis. The force of motion applies to all the particles of the disk as it moves around except for the core. Here is the question. How does the force apply to the core of the disk now that we know the force of motion affects the entire universe? Here is the answer. As the figure shows, the disk, except for its core, is affected by all the forces of the XOY plane, and we know that at the center there is no force of motion applied. So, because the direction of force in the central point is not on the XOY plane, on that very point it is exactly toward the OZ axis, or in vertical shape on the planar disk. Now we accept that a vertical force at the central point associates every ring force. This hypothesis may convince us to accept an essential conclusion about the universe. If every spin force is associated with a vertical force at the center, it is likely that the reverse be true, namely every linear or single force associates a ring force at its axis. If we draw a ring force and a vertical force at the center and then continue with them, we'll come up with a chain of forces that components of all the heavens. Earlier, we said that we have to look for common specifications in the entire universe to have a conclusive model. We concluded that all the atomic particles, planets, and stars are like balls, meaning that material is a sphere in the space, thus it is resistant to external factors. Thus, no planet is a square or with an irregular pattern. Everything must be sphere, and every material is a sphere. We now have reached a conclusion which can prove our theory. We will later say more about it. We presume that the structure of the forces is like rings and chains, or more specifically, full circles. If material is a sphere, it easily fits into the rings of force for moving and rotating. This proves that these two factors are congruent. According to the theory of rotation, the entire universe is composed of three elements: force, material, and energy. We will discuss the three elements here. The following explanation may delineate the relationship between these three elements. You can imagine a car driven at a specific speed on road. There are three factors involved: the car's speed and direction of motion. The car is a material that moves at a speed in a direction. The speed is the energy consumed, and the direction is the force, like all the forces of the universe spiral. It is necessary to say that there has been no definitely plausible, distinctly easy to understand, or philosophically valid definition for these three factors except the definition given by the theory of rotation. Now we will address a general introduction to these three elements as the components of the universe. Material. All the entities in the universe spin. They are spheres, and in cross-sectional look, they are like discs, that we can observe this fact in galaxies. Force. Forces are ring-like and spiral. Energy. Research has explained that energy has a wave-like motion with sine and cosine. That is to say, energy has a cosine as it leaves the core outwards, and when it reaches its height energy, it is a sine. Universe motion equation. To understand the motion equation of spheres, we need to first explain some facts about light. How the theory of rotation explains the light motion equation. Earlier, we have defined the three elements of energy, force, and material, and explained how the three elements function in this space. Now the time has come to explain the motion equation, especially that of light. Forces equation in motion. If we want to move from one point to another, forces are activated in the same direction as it is shown in the picture. If we draw this figure in an organized and different way, we end up this way. Energy in motion equation. Now that we know that energy moves like a wave in spheres, we can formulate motion as follows. According to the motion equation of the material, as you can see, energy is numerated in the center or in the tropical zone. This number is wave-like and moves with sine in compliance with the motion equation. Every equation sets out from a point, but they are on two planes in a vertical way. This formula resembles that of Maxwell, designed particularly for light. Maxwell was the one who discovered the light energy equation. You just saw how we applied the same formula to the theory of rotation. Professor Afshar, the Iranian researcher, explains about the light motion equation and says that light has specifications of material and energy at the same time. And this fact is agreeable to the theory of rotation, as this theory assumes the world is composed of three elements, with each with a distinct essence not transformable into each other. You cannot figure out any cause for such transformation, since each element has a unique essence that is not transformable. To understand why, you should see if it is credible to transform one person into another. ISNA, the Iranian Students' News Agency, reported about Professor Shahryar Sadigafshar, the Iranian scientist working at the Rouen University, whose research was a controversial disagreement to the 80-year-old theory of Bohr. Professor Shahryar Sadigafshar, the young Iranian faculty member of the University of Rouen, presented a theory about the dual essence of light, refuting the theory of Bohr that has been ranked among the most valid quantum theories for 80 years. The results proved once again the validity of his claim, as his article was published by one of the world's highly accredited physics magazines with a board of members among whom there are certain Nobel Prize winners. A science report by ISNA said that Professor Sadeghi's experiments confirmed his theory according to which light simultaneously showed the essence of waves and atoms. Based upon Bohr's theory known as supplementation, it has not been observed that a system can simultaneously display the dual essence, waves and atoms, of light. Light presents itself either as a wave or an atom. A fact proved by Professor Afshar proved wrong through his inventory experiments, reported in one of the most valid world magazines in physics. He explained that his theory could explain certain essential concepts in physics and controversial subjects in physics of astronomy or cosmology, including the essence of material and dark energy, Big Bang, and temporal spatial structure. His theory has put an end to Bohr's theory, the main theory in the field of mechanics quantum, the Bohr theory, and its affiliates that Albert Einstein attempted vigorously, but with no desirable outcome to refute. Professor Afshar, the Iranian physicist residing in Boston, explained over the phone to the research scientific reporter of ISNA about his article published in the Foundations of Physics. My recent articles was published in this magazine, among whose editors are Gerald Herodt and other Nobel Prize winners, with a small number of articles accepted among many more validated, a procedure not common. This proves the importance of the magazine to the Society of Physicists, as well as the importance of my article that has introduced a new theory about the essence of light. The Society of Physicists acknowledged to the importance of the article through their acceptance, an article that disagrees with the 80-year-old theory and scientific axioms determined by the theory of Bohr. It was 2.5 years ago when the young Iranian physicist published his controversial theory in the New Scientist magazine. He complained about that discrimination held against him and said, "The reason for my avoidance from the publication of this theory in a magazine particularly designed for physics was to overcome the invincible resistance against my controversial theory. First, I was not even welcomed to present my proposal. But as people showed interest in the theory, the adversaries started doubting if they could just easily ignore my theory. It took a very long and consistent effort to make the Society of Physics confirm the theory and confess to its importance." Professor Sadeghi said, "My research was based on a well-known experiment about a phenomenon called interference, in which light is directed toward a hole on a disk opposite to another disk in front, which has two small holes. The light crossing through the first hole is directed toward these two holes, and when gone through, the light touches the photo paper, which is held at the definite distance in front of the second disk. We know that light has a wave-like motion, so these two light beams will get to each other, and here it occurs a phenomenon called interference." He says that if the radiated light beams reach one another at their highest or the lowest points, the effect is stronger on the picture. Otherwise, a neutral effect will cause a dark point on the picture. Professor Sadeghi talked about his experiment, which was first done at the private institution called Studies of the Effect of Volume Increase on Radiation in Boston. In this simple experiment, a laser-caused light beam was radiated on a dark surface with two holes. With the laser light as the source, we do not need the first surface with a hole in it. At a long distance from the surface, there is a lens to absorb the light coming from each hole. Then it will converge all the light beams on the mirror to be radiated on a photon detector. Having reached this level, we can record the number of photons exuded from each hole based on how strong or weak the laser light beam is. He said, "It sounds contradictory to talk about the dual essence of light, both atomic and wave-like, but as my experiment proved, light has such an essence. With this theory, the world of physics steps into a new era and shall wait for its future to come and explain more." He said that no entity is able to have the features of an atom and transform into a wave-like entity or vice versa. Namely, it is either this or that or both at the same time. Furthermore, he said, "I believe that light is partly wave-like and partly atom-like. The wave-like force moves the part that is atomic. Next, the wave-like part of light is isolated for a separate research." He talked more with ISNA in this regard. The fundamental particles, according to this theory, may be considered as a source of radiation of magnetic electronic waves. We can explain inertia without reference to the law of Mach used in the general theory of Einstein. Professor Sadegh said that this theory can explain certain definitions that are important to physics, like dark material, dark energy, and direction of time and structure of time-space. He clearly said that radiation of waves from the essential particles is a permanent phenomenon which reached its greatest degree when the Big Bang happened, due to the intense interaction of the waves discharged. Professor Afshar may have not yet reached a physics-related or material equation, but he is trying to reach one. However, this theory has reached an equation for material and force, which we already have discussed. In this documentary, the rotation theory is briefly explicated for solar system and galaxies and atoms. At the beginning, we will talk about the solar system. There has been no model found to fully explain the solar system and other systems. There are still questions unanswered, like the following. What is the cause of the position of the planets on their orbits? Why do planets spin at a greater speed on their orbits in comparison with the Sun that angularly spins? Why do soil planets spin around at a slower speed than Jupiter-like planets? What caused Uranus to spin on its orbit? What is the cause of the angular spin for planets while moving on their own orbits? What is the cause of the perihelion precession, especially in Mercury? Why do planets move largely on a surface around the Sun? Why some planets spin clockwise and other anti-clockwise around the Sun? What determines the direction of the spin for each planet? And many more unanswered questions. First, we have to explain how spiral forces are distributed in the universe and then start answering the questions most important in regard to the solar system. We have to start with saying that the routes of all the planets around the Sun are elliptically orbital, with the Sun as just one of the cannons. To relate the orbital and irregular course around the Sun to the spiral forces, we need to talk about the axis motion of planets, even if their motion is not considerably much, as it is shown in the picture. The orbit of each planet has two cannons. The orbit of each planet in the view of the perihelion precession of the Sun. This is an illustration of the perihelion precession of planets mixed with the planet's orbital motion. It is like as if the planet moves between two balance points, making an orbital course into an orbit with two balance points, making irregular orbits into circular orbits. It is obvious that if we draw the orbital courses of planets subsequently, we will end up having rings like those surrounding Saturn. This proves that they bear a resemblance, but we need to clarify how ring forces are intertwined or connected. Research has found that hexagon is the best shape for the rings to form when connected, as clockwise and anti-clockwise forces are next to each other, like a snowflake. As every spin has a rotation, these rings spin as it is shown in the picture. Now we will talk about why planets move around the sun in the same direction that the sun spins around. This will provide evidence to what the theory has claimed. According to the figure below, if the smallest ring moves anti-clockwise, all the planets will move anti-clockwise, as the laws indicate. According to the valid laws, when the rings share a common center, the force discharged at the OZ axis moves in the same direction as that of the others, namely planets move in the same direction. But what is the reason for the anti-clockwise spin of all the planets that is in the same direction as the rotation around the sun? The sun spins anti-clockwise as well, just like the orbital rings. Research has shown that the majority of rotation in the universe are anti-clockwise, and the central force or its output follows the same rule as that of a right hand. The reason is that for being is marked by the research based on the rotation theory, there are two parallel worlds, one that spins anti-clockwise and has an extrovert output, the world of ours, and the other that spins clockwise and has the introvert output, the other world. Therefore, the majority of rotations are anti-clockwise, and the clockwise ones are due to a particular cause which will be discussed here. So now we can realize why the sun, like orbital rings, and the majority of planets spin anti-clockwise. Why planets rotate in an orbital course around the sun? As we observed, if a planet moves between two balances or two circles, it is moving on an orbital route. It is necessary to note that if the model is designed in an atomic dimension, it is as if an electron moves on an orbital route between two circular balance points and discharges light, just like the atomic model of Niels Bohr. No matter if the model was rejected, the theory of rotation can make up for the shortcomings of Niels Bohr's model. The angular spin of planets. Today, scientists presume that the angle formed by the tropical line and the orbit is due to the crash of meteorites, with that planet changing the angle. The following is an explanation to answer the question. You know that there are two forces applied to one planet. One is the force caused by the spin that comes in from one direction and leaves from another, and the other is caused by the ring course orbital, as you can see in the picture. The second force is the cause of the formation of the angle. The force is linear, and every linear force, according to the theory of rotation, produces ring force that results in a linear force. The result of these two forces, F' and F, that is called F second, is the angle inclination of the tropical line with the orbit, but the point is that, having already agreed upon this that every spin rotates, we can postulate that F second spins too. A feature that is the cause of change of seasons, that is a phenomenon called axis dance. Why is the speed of planets rotating on their orbit higher than their spin speed? The speed of a planet's rotation around the Sun is higher than the speed of the Sun's spin, since it is the heaviest member of the solar system. It doesn't make any sense to say that the planets are parts of a spinning cloud. The rings of the solar system can prove what has been said. We shall not talk mathematically here, so we just let it go for the time being. The speed of the Sun's spin, the line toward which the graph of planets' orbital speed incline. Why does a planet move on a surface? The answer is this. As it was said, a ring force occurs on a surface, thus all the planets move around the Sun in the same direction on a single surface. What factors determine the speed of a planet's rotation? You can see in the pictures that with the help of a few graphs we can prove that the speed of a planet's spin is proportional to the diameter of the planet, due to the ring force that has dominated its area. Since the area of a circle is proportional with its diameter, it is also related to the other factors like the distance between the two canyons, which is displayed with the letter C, and the density of each planet. We have to calculate the density of the spheres involved in the ring force. Density of planets, diameter of planets, spin speed of planets. It is clear that the graphs are in harmony. This is important to know that the graph which shows the rotatory speed is almost the same as the graph that shows the radiation of the black substance in the atomic physics, altogether proving there is a certain similarity between atom and the solar system. Distance from each planet to the central star, like the Sun. The spin theory claims that it can calculate the distance from each planet to the Sun and the cause of it. This requires calculation of the smallest coefficient for two factors, planet's radius and the Sun's radius. As you can see in the picture, it is clear that the circles share the same center, thus they have the same smallest coefficient for them to keep the proper distance from one another. The geometrical picture for each planet and its gravity. Every spin attracts and distracts, meaning that all the forces, especially the force of gravity, has both features. We can expect that spheres attract by their recessions and distract by their projections. Recessions and projections shall be observed on the surface of every spherical shape. This prediction is true. It has been proved with all the pictures that satellites have taken. The Earth displays a recession at the South Pole and a projection at the North Pole as the result of the attraction and distraction caused by the gravity. You can probably see that your weight varies as you move from the polar zones to the tropical. This also is a proof to our theory. A genetic conclusion is also plausible from the fact that weight changes from the tropical zone to the polar ends. If you resided below the tropical line and close to the South Pole, you would have stronger and denser muscles as more gravity is applied on your body than if you were nearby the North Pole. This is not far from our expectation, since humans that live by the South Pole are more likely to have stronger muscles, a proof to the fact that the majority of best runners and bodybuilders live below the tropical line and nearby the South Pole, like Africa. What is gravity and why does it gravitate? As we said before, The entire universe is made of rings and all the stars and planets are spherical. With the view of the features of spheres, all the forces are converged and fell into the center, a fact that is agreeable with Einstein's theory of relativity. But we have found an easier solution, which we'll discuss with giving an example from what happens when a converse lens gathers all the light at its cannon, namely, gravity gathers the waves dissipated in the universe. The theory of rotation says that gravity is not merely dependent on density, but on its spin too. This means that if a thing does not spin, gravity does not apply to it. This is observable in the universe since everything spins around as if gravity applies to everything. The shape of the galaxies. First, we have to explain what the golden radiation spiral is. You can see the golden radiation spiral in the following pictures. The shape and the number have been observed, but no explanation has ever been efficient. However, the theory of rotation can prove it. As you can see in these pictures, it is not possible to have less than 6 circles if we intend to keep the pattern. As you can observe, the golden radiation spiral touches the orbital circles, or it crosses the center of small rings where the spiral has to change its route. This shows that the theory of rotation can prove that the spirals exist in the entire universe. Some points about galaxies. The force of dark matter in galaxies. The dark matter is determined by the speed of stars outside the spiral galaxies. Based on the second Kepler's law, these stars move at a greater speed and thrown outward from the center of the galaxies and get dispersed. There must be a force that works against this additional force, which according to the presumptions of the rotation theory is the ring or chain force intertwining stars by getting them close, just like atoms that get linked. We just found another reason to believe that there is a resemblance between galaxies and atoms, just as you can see in the graph. It confirms our hypothesis and proves that there is no dark matter. 2 bubbles of gamma light beams are observed at both sides of the core of the Milky Way galaxy. Recently, NASA's spacecraft Fermi has discovered 2 bubbles of gamma light beams at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, which had been observed before. These observations are adapted to the theory of rotation, which states that a force from both sides of the core or the center goes through every spin force. The shape of the world. The theory of rotation states that in vacuum, a material spatially is a sphere, thus galaxies as materials are no exception, with the same rule of motion applicable to them as that suggested by the theory of rotation. Everything moves, even the world. Now we can draw the world like this world that also existed before any Big Bang occurred. This fits the scientists' observations. The pictures taken by Cobb convinced scientists in 1992 that the light beams as the background for galaxies are not that regular we thought they were. Later they found that light beams are not very different. The difference was as small as 2/10,000th degree. By 2001, further research and the pictures taken by the American satellites of WMAP suggested the same but small differences. The difference between the temperatures of the light beams discharged by half of the galaxies when compared with the other half are a little higher than 2.73 degrees. Scientists suggest that through calculation of inconsistent microwave light beams, we can understand the local capacities of the universe before the time of Big Bang. This inconsistency is a remembrance of the details of the epoch or the beginning before creation of our today's galaxies. This picture confirms the theory of rotation. A universe of 0 and 1. There is a hypothesis held based on the theory of rotation which states that all the universe is made of ring forces. There is a convention that signifies rings with 0 and every central force with 1. Every universe is full of data numbered either with 0 or 1, just like the digital data. In other words, the entire universe is like gears articulated. This means that we live in a virtual world created by a creator, but in a universe with a system of 1 and 0. The matter of force or will as the cause of motion for stars, planets, and other parts of the universe will require a considerable greater time, which we have a shortage from the very beginning of this documentary. We will come back to this matter later in the form of more documentaries and explain how the theory of rotation has a solution for this problem. It is to be said that a movie called The Matrix was made in Hollywood about this part of the theory. The following are some conclusions from the ring forces. You should have noticed your refrigerator or television rattling, and you may think that contractions and extensions due to the change in room temperature have caused such sounds. It is interesting to know that if you pay a closer attention to these sounds, you will notice that the temperature is stable and there is no contraction or extension. No matter how great temperature changes, no such outcome we shall observe. According to the theory of rotation, these sounds are the effects of those ring forces applied to substances, or even to our skin, like when you feel irritation or inflammation for no reason. What is centrifugal force? We have said before that the spinning planets have the gravity force. If we accept that gravity generally gravitates, we may conclude that the theory of rotation can suggest new rules in compliance with Newton's law that only addresses the question of gravity as a phenomenon particular to planets. Certain phenomena have not been explained yet. Second experiment of relativity applied to Mercury's orbit with a solar perihelion precision. You already know every planet has a perihelion precision, but this fact is observed more in Mercury. And the reason is that because there are spinnings as well as motions, it is obvious that every motion has a motion itself. Consequently, every spinning has a spinning itself. Finally, the orbital route of Mercury and other sun-round spinning planets have the spinning themselves, that it is possible to calculate easier than relativity. The completing parts of Einstein's general relativity by the theory of rotation. We have focused on this part in a general way and without using mathematics. In the general relativity, each material that is fallen down on the space-time plane creates a curve inside it, which causes a curve in the light that passes by. And this part is provable according to the theory of rotation. Easily said, light is composed of chain-like electromagnetic forces that are always in motion. In association with the electromagnetic force, this motion produces a ring force. With gravity, spinning makes a ring space around the Earth, thus causing a curve. One more thing to mention is that if substances spin, they will not only make a curve on the time-space plane, but a twist too. We can observe in the whole universe that everything spins. Spins must make an essential part of the theory of relativity. It is important and more important when mathematically speaking.